everybody for watching. Thanks for coming to join our video. Fabulous to have you here. So we are here with a Halloween special part 1, and this is the spooky side. So joining with me tonight, I have 3 fabulous ladies, and if you've been following Lou's work and the psychic investigation team, you might know me and Lou, as we're more out there, but we have the lovely 2 ladies joining us who's also part of that psychic investigation team. So I'm going to introduce them all now. So we have Lou. I want to give Lou, give us a wave. Then we have the lovely Kath up there as well, and then we have the lovely Danny down there in the corner as well. So us 4, we make up the psychic investigation team. So if you're following, let's say, following the cases like Gannon and the current case of Carbon Horman as well. So us 4 together make one fabulous team, I have to say. And here we are this evening to answer your questions. So as you may have seen on my page or Lou's page, we reached out to you guys to ask, what questions do you really have answers to? What burning questions do you have, and what topics do you want us to talk about? So that's the aim of these videos. So this is part 1, and part 2 will follow. So tonight, in this particular part 1, we're going to look at demonology, hauntings, tools of the trade like the Ouija board, and some spooky experiences. So that's what we're going to talk about in this part. But after this, do stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to look at the more spiritual side of it. So I think we should kick off. So first, I will say thank you very much to everybody that did send in their questions and their topics. Without that, we couldn't do this tonight. And we hope that tonight answers some of your questions and it's as educational as possible. So I think we're going to kick off. So I'm going to hand over to Kath, who is going to start us off. Over to you, Kath.
Right, I'm going to start with the first question. And that's demonology. And Maggie Atkinson asked, how do you become a demonologist? What makes someone want to be one? And is it something that is a natural ability like mediumship abilities are?
Right, 3 questions in one. Okay, hi Maggie. It's an awesome question, actually. I would say, I've written it down, hang on, so I can address it in 3 parts. First of all, how do you become a demonologist? Well, it's training. It's not necessarily a natural ability like mediumship. It's more the study and the practice of. So I would say, I can only speak from my personal experience, and I could say for me, it wasn't that I wanted to become one. It is more a case of what life experience had caused me to become, like a calling. So not something that I would have ever considered, you know, maybe 10 years back, starting out on my development. Certainly not, because back then I would have had a very narrow perspective of, oh, that's too dark, and I only play in the light. So it certainly came about from working with clients who were in spiritual emergencies, if we consider like hauntings, if we want to call them that, and realizing that some spiritual emergencies were far more urgent or severe than others. So I never wanted to be able, I never wanted to not be able to assist and to serve. So I'm a typical Gemini, and I want to learn as much as I can about anything that I'm interested in. And so that's what I did. Just because when you find someone in a spiritual emergency, if it's a severe one, they're in a lot of trauma usually. Do I need to shut that door? Is that a noise? Yeah, just a second. My cats start performing, don't they? Yeah. So that was it really, is that when it comes to severe spiritual emergencies with urgency, I didn't want to leave people in a state of trauma where I couldn't help them. And I'm not saying that I can do everything and assist everyone. I just wanted to know that I can do the best that I can do. And so that's it really. It's just something that evolved. What else was in that question? Is that it? Have I answered it? Let me just check. Yeah, I think so.
Is it a natural ability?
No, I did address that. I wouldn't say it's an ability as such. It's more the training and the study of and the hands-on practice of. So it's not like something that that we're born with, like a sixth sense that we can train and develop. You know, it's not an inherent ability. It is the study of and the application of. It's knowledge, really. And it's knowing. I think you only get to that point of, again, it wasn't wanting to do it, I was being called to do it. So you only get to that point when you stand in your sovereignty and you know that nothing can touch this, you know you're in your dominion. So I think when you are able to overcome any fears in this line of work, that's when you know you can serve in this way as like a demonologist would. And I don't even like to use that term, but it's just something that people are more familiar with. Okay, cool.
Shall I go on to the next one?
Yeah.
Could you, right, Rachel Kate wants to know if you could touch upon the subject of possession and church things of that nature.
Ooh, Rachel Kate. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so when it comes to the church, I'm non-denominational. I don't belong to any church. But typically, when you hear of possession or exorcisms, it'll be via the church or through Hollywood, who will show you a priest that's been ordained and given permission explicit permission from the bishop to perform an exorcism. I don't do that stage. I'll tell you, Rachel Kate, the stages of a possession, right? The first stage of possession is an infestation. And that's when you're going to start noticing, again, in quotes, haunting activities. So you might literally have an infestation of like bugs or something. You may start smelling horrible smells. You'll notice problems with the electrics, banging, scratches on the walls, knocks, usually in threes. And I'm going to be conscious of what I say. I realise we're just opening this interview now, and none of this is to put fear into anyone. It's to empower. But so these are the kinds of things that would be happening in the infestation stage. For a church to be able to have permission to come in and work with you, you would have to be experiencing 4 of the things on that kind of list, right? 4 different activities. Usually a church wouldn't come in at that stage, actually. It would be someone like me or any of us on here who would go and do a clearing. The church would only come out at that stage to do something called a blessing, where they say, you know, bring holy water. They might bring a crucifix and leave a cross at your home, and they say prayers and blessings. That's what happens at that stage. Then we've got, if you haven't dealt with that stage of infestation, the initial stage, and you've put your focus upon it and you're starting to talk to your friends about it and you're recognizing it and you're clocking it all, what happens then is you move on to oppression, because what you might find, a lot of people listening, if they've experienced haunting activities, you will find that sometimes, more often than not, you're not believed, and people will dismiss what you have to say about it. They say you're crazy, or you've been drinking, or you were dreaming, you imagined it. And so you start to become depressed because you know these things are really happening. Then you start to question your sanity. Are these things really happening? Because to you, they're very real, but everyone's trying to talk you out of it. And so you become isolated because you've got no one to talk to who believes you, no one who knows what to do about it. And you start to suffer. The oppression stage, the middle stage, is your mental health and your emotional well-being, the effect that has on you, because for any spirit energy to have any negative effect on you, you would have to be emitting a lower vibrational frequency. And so we're talking about fear, we're talking about depression, right? So those are the kinds, that's the stage that's at. That is typically where I get called in, all right? I can still work on that level. So you're noticing, perhaps you're starting to become ill. And again, let's break that down, because all disease starts on an emotional level. It's dis-ease. with your emotional balance, all right? And that's coming through the depression, the fear, the anxiety, not being believed, you being mocked. And for a negative spirit energy, that's exactly where they'll want you. Because if you can think of, it's what they feed upon. You know, like misery likes company, even within the physical, when you're hanging out with other people, right? If they can get you feeling that way, and perhaps you start drinking, perhaps you start, you know, self-medicating, whatever it is you're doing, what you're doing is providing them with an energy source. It is literally like, imagine they're a shitty old Nokia brick phone and you are the power pack battery. And you being in that state of mind is just amplifying their energy. And hello, Merlin, my cat's come into play, accelerating that. Hi, Merle. Accelerating that activity whilst having a detrimental effect on you. Merlin's sitting on my questions now. That's lovely timing. Okay, so then so I still work with people. David's laughing. I still work with people in that stage where I can work with a client and work with the spirit energy. Possession then is not something that I work with. That will be the church or an ordained minister, right? I'm not a minister. I'm not ordained. And so possession is all of those kinds of behaviors, but what the church will be looking for is on top, further to that list, will be someone who is speaking in different languages that they've had no prior knowledge of, acting out aggressively, harming themselves and others physically, being blasphemous, an aversion to religious items and tools, and like committing, is that the right word? But physical feats that wouldn't be natural, like contortion and things. Okay, so that is where the church then may grant permission to an ordained priest who specializes in possession to come in and work with the person who's claiming to be possessed. The final thing then, and I'll wrap this up because I know there's a lot of questions on demonology and everybody else has so many questions to answer, is perfect possession. Now, a case of perfect possession is when a person has chosen to be possessed. And so that is someone like, well, it can be your next door neighbor, right? It's typically someone who's practicing, a practicing Satanist, where through ritual, they're inviting entities in, willfully committing to that practice. Someone like Aleister Crowley, who would do those practices to summon demons, bring them on in and embody them. That's a case of perfect possession where you've willfully given your permission to have that complete takeover. And I'll wrap it up there because I know it's long-winded, but that's it in a nutshell as far as it comes to the church, I suppose. Thank you, Kath. What you got next? Have you got, do you want to actually, Kath, have a look if there's questions for Dave and Danny, rather than me occupying this whole first section? And then we can come back to deep.
Do you want to do some tools on the trade?
Sure.
What are your thoughts on crystal balls? And do they actually show symbols or signs, etc.? And that's from Sheila Manning.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about crystal balls. I think when I've seen people using them and what have you, obviously I've used them myself. It's called scrying, but crystal balls, I think they've become a, I don't know, they're not a thing I particularly like, because I think they're more of a, it makes it more gimmicky for me. I mean, you can scry with a candle, you can scry with a mirror, you can scry with a, you know, whatever you want to use. It's just a focus of your attention and a focus of just something to clear your mind more than anything. I think, you know, when people say I'm seeing this in the ball, no, they're not. It's what's coming through. So that's why when I've seen people offering readings with crystal balls and they say, oh, I'll do a card reading that's £30, I'll do a crystal ball, you've got to pay £60 for that. I think you scumbag, it's the same thing, you know. So crystal balls, yes, they're handy for if you need something to focus your attention. They're handy if you need something to receive things, but it's not the crystal ball that's getting things. It's you. It's what's coming through to you always. So, and it's the scrying that's the important bit, which is basically you concentrating, you taking yourself out of now and here to see what's coming through to you. You know, they are handy if somebody needs something to you know, focus their mind. They are handy if they need a distraction and something to really put all their energy into to help them with seeing things. But crystal balls, I think I'd prefer a candle, or you know, something really, really simple and basic. And they strike me as more of a prop, if you know, and it does. If anything, I think if somebody walks in and you've got a crystal ball sitting in front of you, it frightens them more than anything. It makes them think, oh my God, and their energy more shuts down more than anything. So I think things like that, you know, you've got the cards, and the cards give you a clear outlay of a situation, you know, and you can show that person, which I find is handy sometimes with people. But the ball isn't really I think it's more of a personal thing. If you're going to use a ball, it's to you, and it's what you're doing. It's not got nothing to do with sort of reading, really. It's a glass ball, you know. So I don't know what everyone else thinks on that, but I'll leave it with, you know, if anyone's got anything else to say.
No, I completely agree with Danny, completely. I mean, I've got crystal ball. It's for decoration, really. I've tried it, and like Danny said, I can see bugger all in a crystal ball, to be honest. But exactly what Danny says as well, it comes from your mind. So when you are getting images and symbols in, it is in here. It's not in that ball. So I completely agree with everything that Danny has said. It is more, and as Danny says about the gimmicks as well, isn't it that typical image of a psychic who sits with a scarf on her head around a table, a couple of candles there, curtains closed, and a crystal ball doing that. Oh look, someone's down there wearing a turban. Sorry, love. But it's that typical image, isn't it? You think, oh, psychic. Oh, must have a crystal ball. So no, I completely mirror what Danny says. Absolutely.
I just wanted to add that, as you see, I have my crystal ball here with me tonight because, and I've never used it actually in a session anyway, but because I knew we were addressing it tonight. And I've kept it all these years because a beautiful friend gifted it to me. Miss Kath Talamy, if she's watching, thank you so much, love. It sits on my office desk. But yes, agree with you guys, it is just a tool. It is a point of focus to allow the third eye to engage, so you're not actually seeing physically in the ball images. What I will say is that I was speaking to one of my coaching clients yesterday, I think it was, and I said to her that oftentimes I will look away rather than looking at you when I'm talking to you, and more often than not, I'm looking at a blank wall because I'm seeing on that. So you know what I mean, don't you? It gives me a blank canvas to focus upon and allow images to come forth. And that's exactly what's going on with the crystal ball. So yeah, go ahead, Kath.
Right. A tool of the trade?
Yes.
What are your thoughts? Oh, sorry, I've just said that one. Talk about Ouija boards, haunted objects, and the debug box. That's from Shelley Rourke.
Hello, Shelley Rourke. So good question. Oh, Lou's got her board there. The Dibbet box, I'll leave the Dibbet box to either Danny, Lou, or Kath, because I've got no idea. So I can just speak my thoughts on the Ouija board, right? I have used one, and it's in the safety of the confines of the church, where we were using it for the purposes of bringing forward spirit, and then releasing them to the light if they needed help crossing over. So that's the only time that I've used a Ouija board. They do get a bad rap, I feel, for both a good and bad reason. What would I say? It can be a really good tool to use if you are using it for the right purposes, with the right intentions. If you are going into it to mess around with it, no, so let's see what dead people we can speak to, then you're asking for trouble, and then you know, and you basically deserve what you get, frankly, because you don't know what you're inviting in. And I've always said, if I ever went to a party and someone said, oh, let's get the Ouija board out, I would leave that party. I ain't staying there to watch that, to be perfectly honest. And the people think, oh, it's just a board, what can a board do? It's not the board that's doing anything, it's you and the spirit that's doing something, right? Because you are, ultimately, you're almost evoking, or you know, you're pushing and you're prodding spirit, and you don't know what you are inviting in. Then what can happen from that is you can get a spirit attachment, where a spirit will attach to you because you have invited them into your energy. You could also invite them into your house. If you are, you know, if you're sat in your house and you start doing the Ouija board, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're inviting into your house, and that's where hauntings can then start. So I would say with Ouija boards, be very, very careful. If you're going to use one, have someone with you that knows what they are doing, that knows how spiritual protection works, and use it with respect. Because don't forget, you could be sat there going, right, come on, you, come on. I want you to come through. You come through now. Come through now. Don't forget, your spirit loved ones are also in the spirit world. So think about it. Would you like it if, you know, one of your friends was like poking and prodding your loved ones to come through? So it's about respect for spirit as well. So just be very aware of that. I would say be very careful. It's not a toy. It's not something to be used or taken lightly, basically. So that's what I would say on Ouija boards. Anybody else have any other opinions?
My big fat thumb every time I go to unmute. Danny, did you want to offer anything on Dybbuk or Ouija before I go ahead? No? Oh, she's on mute. Okay. Yeah, absolutely right, Dave. And I would say, as far as Dybbuk boxes go, same principle, same as haunted dollies, any haunted, cursed objects proclaimed to be. We've said it so many times before, Dave, that inanimate objects cannot be cursed or possessed. Ouija board right here is just a piece of MDF. Tarot cards are cardboard, paper, dollies, porcelain or plastic, it doesn't matter. Dybbuk boxes, usually wooden, typically. But that's what I think it's important to say, because so people can have an understanding, is that the only way something can be possessed, if at all, if that can even happen, right, is to totally overcome, to break someone's free will. Now, a board or a Dybbuk box, any item, any inanimate object, doesn't have a nervous system, doesn't have a brain function, doesn't have a soul, and so cannot be possessed. I think that's all I really wanted to say about it, to try and make sense of why that is. But yeah, all right, back over to you, Kath.
Shall I go back to, oh, actually, I haven't done any hauntings. Grace Grella asked, how do you handle negative energy when dealing with hauntings? Who wants to have a go at that?
Is it me again? Oh, she do dabble in the dark side. How do I handle negative energy? Well, that's kind of broad question. I would say that's 2 or 3-fold, Miss Grace Gralla. Hello. Because what it really comes down to with me is embodying my own sovereignty and my own knowingness, my own personal emission of my own frequency of nothing can touch this, nobody can touch this. And, you know, that works on the living and the dead. People don't mess with you when you possess that energy. Possess maybe not being the right word for tonight, but that's what it is. So I approach all situations with that energy, but I'm also approaching with compassion and love and understanding. So, and that applies to, this is where it becomes twofold. That applies to both the client who is in distress with, let's say, a haunting, and the spirit energy that's there. I'm approaching both with love, compassion, and understanding. Okay. There's so many people that say that you go in and you know, propel this entity out, and yeah, no, I don't think so, because a lot of times what you'll find with spirit activity is, for the most part, spirit energies in a haunting can be confused. And I like to think of them like little grandmas with Alzheimer's or something, right? And so I would never, in the physical, approach a dear little old lady who's confused and tell her to get the fuck out of my house. I don't think that's how we should speak to people. It's about respect and some compassion. And so what I do is I see how I can assist. I approach them with love, because what you got to remember as well, even if that spirit energy is not of a palatable vibration, if it's of a lower energy, it will always be transformed. When we're talking in terms of energy and vibration, the lower energy will always be transformed by the dominant, which is love. So if I'm coming in with love, they have to rise up to meet me, or they're going to fall back because they are repelled by me. It's like kryptonite. Okay. So they either have to match me or they have to step off. So that's how I approach them. But it's important to say as well, just very quickly, is that I also work with the client, so the resident of the home, the homeowners, the family, whoever it may be, because they, and it hasn't always been this way, is to just go in and sort the spooks. Danny's been with me, we've done these things before, right? Now I work with the families because now I understand that the families have a personal responsibility for the activity that's going on in their homes. And so it's getting to the root of where that's coming from, what they've been doing, what frequency they're emitting. Are they depressed? Have they got substance abuse issues? What's going on with them? Because you can create that activity. And so Danny and I go in and we'll clear that energy. But if the homeowner is still persisting, oh, I just had a message. Okay, Dave. If the homeowner is still persisting with those activities, they're going to create more of the same. So that's how I deal with it. I get happy, I emit love, and I tackle both the living and the dead.
Okay, guys, so I've just seen that because we're on basic Zoom, we've got a 40-minute time limit, unfortunately. So we're going to have to wrap this up. We've got 3 minutes left. So we might have time for one quick question, or we can wrap up here and then move on to part 2 in a separate video. What would you like to do?
Any quick ones there, Kath?
Got to unmute myself then. Why are some people psychic and not others?
Well, how can I answer this really quickly? Well, we all have psychic ability, right? So we all have intuition, that gut instinct, or whatever you want to term it as, psychic, whatever it might be. This is just my opinion, right? Based on my own experience. We all have it, but I believe we're not all meant to do it, if that makes sense. So for example, I don't know, I'm going to say Whitney Houston, because I saw her on TV, on a documentary yesterday. She was here to sing, right? She had the ability to sing. That was her. She was born to sing. That's what she did. Now you can teach me to sing, but you'll be there all day, right? I'm not meant to do that. I'm meant to do something else. So although we might have the ability to learn to do something, I don't feel we're all meant to do those things. We all have our own paths. We all have our own skill sets or our own abilities in certain areas. So, but everyone has intuition. I tell everyone all the time, you have intuition. You know, as psychics, we're not special. We don't have a special VIP members club cards. You know what I mean? We all have that ability to tap into something. But you call yourself a psychic if you're, I believe, if you are working or using that is your life. So for me, being a medium, that's not a job, that is the way I live my life. I live my life in a spiritual way, so it becomes part of you, and that's when you can say, oh, I'm a medium or a psychic. As I said, having said that, I believe we all have that intuition, so I encourage everyone to tap into it, listen to what your gut is telling you, in whatever situation it might be, and that will help you along your path. And I'll wrap it up there because we've got about 30 seconds left. So everybody, thank you for joining us for part 1 on the spooky side. I hope this answers some of your questions, but stay tuned for part 2, which is coming up next. So girls, say goodbye for now, and I will see you in a minute.